There is an extensive historical literature, of course, about how the British made their way into India, principality by principality, state by state. The long and short of the interaction between the Sikhs and the British was that a series of battles were fought, identified as the First and the Second Anglo-Sikh Wars, and the end result was that Punjab was annexed to the Crown. The Sikhs saw it as a war between Punjab and British India, and Indians who served in the British armies at that time were Indians from different provinces. The Punjabis called these groups foreigners or Easterners. The fighting abilities of the Sikhs were not lost on the British, however, despite their eventual loss of sovereignty. Some of the British observers at the time fueled the mythos of Sikh soldiery, drawn on still now for pithy quotes about Sikh military prowess. When they took over, they lost no time in recruiting those top-notch fighters to their own military endeavours. Already by 1857, the time of the first major mutiny against British rule, Sikh troops from the princely states were serving with the British Indian Army, and after that Sikhs came to serve in that army out of all proportion to their numbers in the total population. This trend continued even after independence. Kashwant Singh notes that at some point Sikhs comprised a fifth of the total Indian army. After the threatening but unsuccessful mutiny, a special Viceroy's Commission was created to reform the armed services, along with a host of other reforms intended to thwart the possibility of such rebellion in future. The reform of the army benefited Sikhs in particular, who were labelled a martial race in the British biopolitical scheme. A Punjabization of the infantry regiments resulted in the number of Sikh battalions increasing from 28 to 57 during the period 1862 to 1914, while all other groups except the Nepalese Gurkhas, another martial race, declined. During World War I, numbers of Sikh troops fighting for the British increased from 35,000 to 100,000. More to the point in terms of the history of Sikh identity, the British capitalized on and encouraged the observance of the 5Ks by Sikh soldiers. This preference for Amritdhari Sikhs by British recruiters itself encouraged initiations into the Khalsa among a population increasingly dependent income from service in the armed forces. At the same time as martial Sikh identity received this military boost from the colonialist power, a reform movement called the Arya Samaj, which many Sikhs had originally been interested, took a decided turn toward Hindu missionization. Arya Samaj activities which focused on absorption of Sikhs into the broader Hindu community prompted the creation of Sikh organization, the Singh Sabha or Assembly of Lions, which would assert a separate Sikh identity and work toward purging Sikhism of various Hindu elements that had crept into it. A famous pamphlet of the Singh Sabha movement was called "We Are Not Hindus." The Singh Sabha movement represented the consolidation of a particular, relative uniform understanding of what Sikhism was, which some scholars emphasize was imposed on what had been previously a much more fluid situation. Significant also is the fact that the Singh Sabha, by the turn of the century, had become powerful not only in India but among Sikhs overseas, too. The chief Khalsa Diwan, set up to coordinate all the branches of the Singh Sabha, was established in Amritsar, but a Khalsa Diwan movement that would link Gurudwaras across North America began as well. From this early twinkling of modern Sikh identity, they're emphasized as uniform, unique, and separate from Hinduism. The Panth was envisioned as a transnational entity, with a base in Punjab, but with important tentacles extending across oceans. Of particular interest is the formation, at about the same time, of the primarily Sikh Gadar or Mutiny movement, which had an important base in Northern California, used today by Khalistanis. The Gadar movement against colonialism gathered steam after what was called the Kamagatameru incident, where a Japanese ship loaded with potential Sikh immigrants was refused landing in Vancouver and sent back to India, where 23 of the returnees were shot as troublemakers and others formed the nucleus of an armed resistance movement. The entire Gadar episode was critical to later developments in two ways. First, it underscored the important role played by the Sikh diaspora and the immigration policies of the countries that hosted it, with networks set up during Gadar times still used today by Khalistani activists abroad. Second, the remnants of the Gadar rebellion in India formed the basis of what became the Babarik allies, who rejected the Gandhian scheme of non-violence as a means of achieving independence. Today's Babakasa was named after them. The potentially dangerous nationalism represented by the Gadar rebellion drew British and Sikhs apart at home in India, even as Sikhs were being sacrificed in large numbers in British interests during World War I. On April 13, 1919, came the straw that broke the camel's back. Several thousand people had gathered in a walled compound called Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar to protest the enactment of the Rowlatt Bill set up to enable the government to curb political activism.